I was 16 the night my life split cleanly into a before and an after. Easter weekend had always been a big deal for my family, at least. It used to be. That year, my grandfather hosted his annual cookout on James Island, the kind he'd been throwing since before I was born. 3 long tables sat under the live oaks, the air thick with low country boil, charcoal smoke, and cousins chasing each other through the yard. For a few hours, wrapped in the yellow sundress Grandpa bought me, I felt like a kid who still belonged somewhere. My mother, Harmony Carver, didn't share that nostalgia. I overheard her laughing on the phone near the dessert table, describing a mother-daughter spa day she and my half-sister Haven had planned for the next morning, followed by a Bahamas trip with her husband Colin. My name wasn't part of the itinerary. It rarely was. I left the cookout early, claiming a headache. Grandpa pressed the Jeep keys into my hand and asked me to text him when I got home. I didn't know it then, but that was the last normal conversation I'd have for months. A spring storm rolled across I-26 as I drove west, one of those sudden low-country tempests that turn the sky green and the road into a river. I never saw the tractor-trailer until it jackknifed across 3 lanes. The impact crushed the Jeep and flipped it twice. The world turned metal and screaming and then nothing at all. At MUC, doctors fought to keep me alive. My pelvis was shattered, my spleen ruptured, my brain swelling dangerously. I needed emergency surgery within the hour. The nurse called my mother on FaceTime, turning the phone so she could see my blood-covered face and the ventilator tube down my throat. Harmony lay on a spa table with a sheet mask on, cucumber slices over her eyes. Haven lounged beside her, earbuds in, scrolling. When the nurse explained I might die without immediate consent, my mother sighed as if they'd interrupted a manicure. "If she doesn't make it, just let me know later," she said. "I'm not leaving this treatment to sign anything." Haven laughed, snapped a screenshot of my broken body, and sent it to her group chat with the caption, "Finally, some peace." The call ended. The trauma team stared in stunned silence. The nurse dialed my next emergency contact. My grandfather, Clarence Brooks, retired police chief and the one adult who had never in my life let me down. He was already grabbing his keys before the nurse finished speaking. Still in rubber boots and an apron smeared with shrimp, he barreled across the bridge through lightning and blinding rain, reaching the hospital in 16 minutes. He signed every consent form they shoved at him and rushed to my side. He leaned close and whispered the words he'd used since I was small and afraid of storms. "I've got you, baby girl. Grandpa's right here." Then I was wheeled into surgery, and he sat vigil outside the operating room for 9 straight hours. He refused coffee, refused rest, even when the storm knocked out the power. He didn't move until they transferred me to ICU just before dawn. The next 18 days were a blur I wasn't awake for, but Grandpa lived every second of them. He slept in a vinyl chair, boots on, badge still clipped to his belt out of habit. He told me stories, read To Kill a Mockingbird, hummed the hymns his mother used to sing. Nurses tried to send him home. He refused. Doctors delivered updates that swung wildly between hope and dread. He never left my side. On day 16, a man named Donovan, a lawyer who had worked cases with Grandpa decades earlier, showed up with a folder. He drove straight to my mother's house, where Harmony and Haven were packing for a Royal Caribbean cruise. He handed her papers, a petition to revoke parental rights for medical neglect and a civil suit from the hospital. Harmony went pale. Haven burst into tears not from remorse, but because it would ruin spring break. 2 days later, while Grandpa sat beside me whispering about going fishing when I woke up, my eyes finally opened. Everything hurt, but the first thing I saw was my grandfather's face, unshaved, exhausted, glowing with relief. He held up the whiteboard at the foot of my bed. In bold black marker, legal guardian Clarence Brooks. I cried until the tears ran into my ears. He wiped them away with his thumb, still smelling faintly of seawater and shrimp. After 3 weeks, they discharged me not to James Island, but to Grandpa's stilt house on Folly Beach. He'd transformed his tackle room into a soft blue bedroom for me, hanging the same wind chimes we made when I was 9. Through the window, the ocean exhaled and rolled, steady and endless. Recovery was brutal. Physical therapy left me shaking. Nights were filled with pain that stole my breath. Grandpa was always there driving me to therapy, cooking shrimp and grits I could eat with a wired jaw, sitting beside me when nightmares dragged me back to the crash. Sometimes I woke to hear him praying quietly, in the living room asking God to give him enough years to see me whole. Meanwhile, the consequences of that phone call came from my mother. The preliminary hearing played the FaceTime recording and Haven's screenshot. The courtroom went silent. The judge transferred temporary custody to Grandpa on the spot. Within weeks, Harmony lost her job for medical neglect of a minor. Haven's scholarship to the College of Charleston was revoked. Colin filed for divorce and removed his name from the house. Faced with foreclosure, mother and daughter moved into a small apartment off Savannah Highway. For the first and last time, my mother called me. I let it ring. 7 months after the accident, I walked into the final hearing without a crutch. My limp had mostly faded, my resolve had not. On the stand, I told the judge exactly how it felt to hear my own mother say I was expendable. The judge delivered the ruling swiftly. Permanent termination of parental rights, civil judgment in favor of the hospital, and full legal adoption by Clarence Brooks. 3 weeks later, the adoption papers came. I signed my new name, Serenity Brooks, with hands that shook harder than they had the day I first stood after surgery. Grandpa framed the certificate next to my dad's old service photo. Life finally began to stitch itself back together. I finished high school, made the honor roll, and got into the College of Charleston. Graduation day, Grandpa stood waiting in his dress uniform, medals polished, eyes bright. When I reached him, I threw my arms around his neck, and he lifted me like I still weighed nothing. 5 years have passed. I'm 21 now, a trauma counselor in Mount Pleasant. Every day I sit with teenagers who feel unwanted, and I tell them what I learned the hard way. You don't need the people who walked away. You need the ones who stayed. Grandpa is 77 and still mows his own yard, still fries the best shrimp and grits in South Carolina, still calls me baby girl once a day. My room is still pale blue. The ocean is still steady. Our little house on stilts feels more like home than anywhere I've ever lived. As for Harmony and Haven, they left South Carolina years ago. I never searched for them. They never searched for me. The silence is clean. It's peace. People ask if I'm angry. I'm not. Anger is heavy and I've carried enough weight. They ask if I forgive them. Forgiveness isn't owed, it's earned, and they never tried. What I carry instead is gratitude. Gratitude for the man who chose me when choosing me meant everything might break apart. Gratitude for the grandfather who became my father, my family, my safe harbor. Family isn't the people who share your blood. Family is the person who shows up when your blood is spilling on an operating table. Family is the one who stays, and that's my story.